Welcome to Higher Living for the week. It is now episode 38. It's a pleasure to have you along. I am your host, Chad Walkerton, and today we've got three issues that we're going to be going into, which we think is going to be super relevant for those of you that are continuously coming back to watch this show and in greater numbers. So firstly, want to give you a shout out. If you are returning and you are connecting with the content, please like and share this from the very beginning. Spread the word. We're trying to have honest conversations over here. Where we're going to be starting today, and we need to give a shout out to our community on X, we're able to come together around the question of what is the average cost per day that Australians are paying for their cannabis? So we're going to be going into that. Then we're going to be going, what is the impact on society and a key population of society, i.e. young people, of what legalization does to young people's access? There's a key question. I think this is going to be super relevant for parents, for educators, for anyone that has an interest into future generations. We're going to be exploring that. And then a final piece is going to be around very relevant in today's culture. So we're going to go into that. That is everything you can expect to see on episode 38. We hope you hang around to the end. And if you are liking it, please join the conversation. Big thing at the moment for all Australians is cost. Think about it. Who isn't under the pump at the moment? I was back in Australia last year and I will be back on my home shores very soon. There's big things that are happening in my life that I will share more about in the coming months. But when I was back, I noticed that a lot of people are under the pump. So increasingly, what people are paying is a very important topic. And I can place myself back into a situation where I was on the DSP. So I was on the disability support pension, and I know how I was getting through with my medicines. So I can only imagine the stresses that patients are facing in being able to meet these increasing costs. And so what we're doing today is we're going to understand what is the daily cost per patient and how can you optimize your spend? Because increasingly we've got to eat, we've got to live somewhere, we've got to raise kids, we've got to participate, we've got to enjoy our life. There's a whole range of factors that we've got to look at. So how can you fit this into your budget? So what we were able to see from an initial search, and we've got to reference the CAMS 22 study that was able to determine the average cost per patient was around $14.20. So that is the most credible information that we have. We also then did our own research to see, okay, what are the ranges that we're seeing? And while we're using that as a benchmark, we're also able to see that that could be lowered if you change the route of administration. So you're able to change the different products that you have, or the way you consume your products was typically able to reduce that price a little bit. So if you are looking to reduce your spend, lean in closer and let's explore this. Where we're going to start is that top range, right? So the CAMS 22 report was indicating that patients were on average spending $14.20 per day. What we did was then reach out to our community and did other research to be able to determine, well, what are patients actually paying and who's willing to contribute? So we're going to have a look at an individual that is on a rotation of flowers that range in price and quality. So that range could be starting at $100 and going north of $150 for their product, which is around 10 grams of flower at a time. This individual had 7 flowers on rotation. And when we were able to break that math down, excluding clinic fees, be mindful of that, excluding clinic fees, that was around $18.43 per day. So think about this, 7 flowers ranging in quality, ranging in price, and we're seeing around $18.40 per day. So that is above the ceiling of what the CAMS 22 study came in at, which was $14.20 per day. So that is above average. And I'm sure that you can go much higher than that as well. So your daily spend could be way north of that, depending on the quantities that you take of your medicine, the different options that you have, and how many different products you're combining to be able to meet your needs. Now, just to say as well, we're not doing this in any way. If you require more of your cannabis, and you require high doses for your medical needs, there's nothing but love here. Yeah. So just be mindful of that. There's no judgment. What we're trying to do is provide different real life examples based then and compared based on averages that we've seen via research to help you determine what is best for you. That's all we're trying to do. So if you are paying more, which we know many of you could be paying in the thousands per month, the question is, how can you look at other ways potentially to reduce that? And there are different ways that are coming up in terms of reimbursement pathways. But again, if you are doing that, you got to keep going. Are there ways you can substitute? Are there ways you can change and ask your clinician to be able to reduce some of those costs to different routes of administration? But that may not always work. So it may not be practical. You may be getting relief at a certain point and you need to maintain those meds. So we totally understand that. There are exceptions. There's no doubt we're trying to provide ranges. And where we're coming in at is that range of $18.40 about per day. If we then bring that back and we bring that back to $11.50 per day, that is one flower product used per day at a cost of $11.50. So without the rotation, you're going down from $18.40 to $11.50 per day. And that's going to get you a flower product in the Australian market as well. That's still above. So if we're looking at that as $11.50, that's still above this average of $8 per day. And you may be thinking, well, how do I get to $8 per day? And is that feasible at all? I think it's probably helpful at this time to then go, well, let's have a look at what products, and we're going to just focus on a number of products. Obviously, for the duration of time, we can't go into everything, but we're going to be focusing on ranges for THC flower, which the very bottom is coming in around that $85, $90 mark. You do need to question quality of that. There has been some concerns around the quality of flower that's being imported from areas like Canada and flooding our market. And ideally, that is very low cost. So if you're going for low cost, are you going to be getting quality? That is a big factor that you need to be mindful of. But the ranges of THC flower that we're seeing is anywhere from around that $85 to $90 northwards of $150. So it could come up to, say, $170 for around 10 grams. If you're then adding in something like a CBD, and a CBD 3,000 milligrams, market average is around that $160. And we've got to give a shout out to Kyla, who's been able to provide some of this information, which is great. And then if you're looking at a THC oil, again, there are some outliers here, but you've got a range of, say, around $80 to $120, depending on quality, where you go, if there's any discounts that can be applied, et cetera, et cetera. So if you think about what we've already spoken about, a rotation of 7 flowers is coming in at the $18 mark. You're having a look at one flower, which you've standardized on. You're coming in at around $11.50, which can still be a big press for a lot of people. Then you've got to think, well, how do I reduce my cost? And it could be about not utilizing the flower products, but going for things like oils where you get more bang for your buck. Now, after doing this, I had a conversation to a doctor that I greatly respect in the market, and he told me a story about some of the patients that he's prescribing to, and their daily average is below $1.50. They are on a THC oil. There's around 6 milligrams that is taken per day, which may not meet all your needs. This may be for an individual that is trying to get relief at nighttime, having it after work, utilizing this to get to sleep, very consistent in what they're doing. And you can see that that spend drastically reduces to something which is probably pretty affordable for a lot of people. But you got to see, is that what we're wanting? Is that what you're wanting? Does that meet your needs? And it may not. But this is just an exercise to show the great range that currently exists and giving you opportunity to go, well, maybe I could become back onto an oil. How do I explore an oil? What are my doses going to be? How do I use a dosing system to be able to understand, does it meet my needs? And if it does, okay, I've got better options that can be better suited to what my budget is. Now, the biggest factor with this as well is this hasn't included anything around clinic costs. And we're not going to go for anything which is free appointments. We don't consider that medical. If you're receiving an appointment and you're not part of a real world data study, or you're not in being incentivized for your research and you've got a free session, we got to ask some questions around what are you actually receiving there. So typically the doctor that we were talking about, where we've got that daily cost below $1.50, he is a doctor, and that doctor comes with fees, and those fees can range. Again, we're going to have ranges somewhere between, it could be $50, it could come up to 80, and the ranges could come up to 200 north of that. You've got to think where is best for your budget, where is best for your needs, and you got to make a decision. So factoring in where we've been able to look at thus far in terms of products, you've also got to consider what is the clinic option that's going to meet your needs, and you've got to come up with what is your best package to move forward. We want to finish up here and we're going to move on. We've probably spent a little bit too long on that. So drop some comments below, anything that you want to contribute, any of your own personal stories that you have to continuously help us understand what a patient's paying, and it's going to help us to then be able to come back and help you at a future stage. That is what we're trying to do here, and being able to try to share information, get us thinking in a way that can support you with where you need to be. Moving on. What is the impact of cannabis on young people? And where could we go to understand this? Now, Australia is not doing the best job at collecting data. There's no doubt about it. And there's a little place that could step up. Shameless plug. What we've been able to look at is an article that you're going to be able to see here, which has come out of Colorado. So as you're probably aware, Colorado was one of the first states in America to be able to support the legalization of cannabis. And there was a fine, the laws changed in 2020, and that came into effect in 2014. So we have, a decade of data, which is pretty good as a starting point, and this is going to increasingly get better over time. And it's wonderful to see America gets a lot of slack, in terms of how it operates in terms of the state-based programs, and we're going to drill into this in another time. I've got new data, which is probably going to ensure I need to come back and talk in more detail about what I've spoken about in the past in terms of my views around the American market. So just put that on hold for now, and we're going to focus on, we've got 10 years of data. What are we seeing? And this graph is going to show it all. And so what this is indicating in many ways is that the decision to legalize cannabis is working for young people, which is interesting. Love to hear your thoughts on that. Finally, to wrap this up, we said we're going to talk about a little bit of culture. At the moment, if you don't know, Euros is occurring, which is a wonderful time. And at the moment, I'm over in South America. So you get Copa America. So it's the South American, or the Americas, playing football against themselves while the Euros is on. And you're going to basically have all day, if you are that way inclined, to be able to watch sport. And one of the biggest things that we think is interesting is the Germans have come out recently. So the Germans are hosting it, and particularly being mindful of how football fans have behaved, certain countries that we don't want to identify and lay blame with, because it does happen across multiple countries. But the Germans have singled out the English fans and said to them not to drink, but to consume cannabis. Now, this reminds us of a post that we did years ago, where we saw a high up police officer, indicating that cannabis is not something that is high on their agenda, because people are going to be at home. As you can see here in the post, we think it's quite humorous. As you're going to be able to see here, this is evidence of where cannabis can go on a macro level, on a cultural level, to be able to support safety in the community. And there's a big evidence of the changing attitudes that are occurring in this space. If you're watching this, we're all in this together. Some of this information is being shown to look at. This new normal is approaching, and the new normal isn't what we experienced in 2020. That wasn't the new normal. What we're approaching is this new way of life, and there's going to be new medicines that come in to be able to support us to feel our best, new medicines and new ways to help us unwind, new ways that we're going to be able to access healthcare, and many more things that are occurring. And by watching this, you are a part of it. You may not feel it, but you're a part of conversations, and you can contribute by adding comments below or coming on to OnTracker as a mobile device coming in and gaining an understanding around how your medicines affect you, what sort of response you have, and how does it help you over the longer term. Or you can get involved in one of our studies. There's going to be more happening around the world very soon. That is it for today. I think it's been a very interesting dive into 3 key topics. I am your host, Chad. This is episode 38 of the Higher Living Show. We wish you a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much.